Alright, what's poppin' people? Haligonian back at it again, another tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to draw over images. So I'll just show you an example of a clip where I did this effect. So there's actually two different ways of doing this that I'm going to go over. One is where you draw frame by frame like I've done here, and that allows you to do all sorts of cool things like having it sort of cascade over the subject. Then there's also one that's more simple and automatic where you just draw a bunch of lines or one line, and then you have it fill it in over a certain amount of time, and write on is what it's called. So I'm going to be doing this with this footage of geese. First off, you're going to want to make sure that you have the paint toolbar open here, as well as brushes. Then you're going to want to go to the brush tool, which is up here, or you can click Control B and it opens up the brush tool, and that should open up the brushes window automatically. And once you have the brush tool selected, just double click on the composition down here. So like the layer that you want to write on, it can be a composition or a file, but in this case it's a composition. So double click here, then it opens up that layer in the layers panel. You're no longer in the composition panel, but the layers panel. And here is where you're able to draw actually directly onto the footage. So I'm going to go to the first frame I want to draw on. You can zoom in with the scroll wheel, hold spacebar, and drag to move it around. Now we're going to look over some of the settings here for painting. So first of all, you have your brush. You just click here to access the brushes. That determines how wide it is and how soft it is. So that's a softer brush, that's a harder brush. So it's like blurred around the edges, and of course the size. So you're going to want to select the brush size that you want. I'm going to go with a hard 5, but you can pick whichever fits you. And also, if you want to change the brush size easily, hold down Control and then click and drag the mouse, and you see that changes the brush size. You can also go into paint, and then you can view the brush size there, so I can see it's going from 1 all the way up to whatever I want. I'm going to go around 5 or 6. Then you're going to want to select the color that you want to paint with. I'm going to go with white in this case. And now the rest of it is fine. Opacity. You can put on different blending modes if you so like. So that's going to make the color interact with the background in a certain way. So if I set this to, let's say, overlay, you can see it changes the look of it depending on what's underneath it. You might like that. It's up to you, of course. I'm just going to keep it on normal. And now here's the most important setting, is duration. So the two modes I showed you before were single frame and write on. So single frame is where you draw something, and then you go to the next frame, which is Control right arrow, and then it disappears, and it's only there for that one frame, and you can draw something else, and you see it. It's just frame by frame. And then the other setting, write on, I'll go over later. This is you draw something, and then at the speed you drew it, it will be drawn on over the video, and you can adjust the speed afterwards as well. So what I'm going to do now is just set this to single frame, white brush. I'm going to go through and go frame by frame and make an animated outline of this bird. Okay, so I've gone ahead and drawn a little animation over this video. I go back to the composition tab, you can view it here. Just quick. And so what I'll show you now is what some people wonder, is how to change the color of all of these, because there's a lot of lines on many different frames. So if you want to change the color of them, what you're going to do is click on the layer down in the timeline and press U, so double click U, and it'll view all the properties of this that are not at their default values. And I'm also going to press the tilde key, which is to the right of number 1, to open up the timeline panel in full screen. Now you can see every single brush stroke we did which is when we press down the mouse to when we pick it back up, has been recorded as a separate brush. So for this whole thing, I have 101 brushes. So obviously you're not going to go through and change them all individually. What you can do is just click on brush at the top, the first one, which for me is brush 101, scroll all the way down, hold shift and press brush 1. Now you've selected them all. And if you change the color of one, it will change the color of them all. So I'll just make it a nice blue. Press tilde again to close the timeline. Now you can see it's all blue. So that's how you do the single frame drawing over video effect. Now I'm going to show you how to do the write on. So I'll just pick another time, maybe right here, whatever frame you want it to end at, pick at that frame. And now same thing, Control B to open the brush, double click on the layer, or just click on the layer and click on the layer tab up here for the layer panel. And now what you're going to do, again, select your brush that you want, and we're going to set it to write on. So now what I'm going to do is just draw over my picture with how I want it to look at the end. So you can do it in multiple brush strokes. Every time you write, it will be erased, so you're going to have to remember what you've drawn, because the way that it works by default is it has it start at the frame that you're currently at. So now that you've drawn in the whole picture, you're going to see that it starts at this point and then starts drawing in from that point and then ends. Each line is going to end however much time away it took you to draw that. So for example, this line took me however long to draw, so it's going to take that long to write on. And you also notice that each line is drawn in individually. So you want to think about that when you're drawing. Like I drew this line and then I took my finger off the mouse and drew this line. You might want to have it all drawn on one line or all converge from one point, up to you. But of course there's a problem here. It starts where we want it to end, and all the lines are going awfully slow. So what I'm going to do is just set a key or a marker here so that I know this is where I want the write on effect to end. I'll do that by pressing Shift 2, and then I'll go to somewhere a few frames before where I want it to start, press Shift 1, so I know that's where I want it to start. Now I'm going to press the tilde key so I can make the timeline full screen. And now there's two things we have to adjust here. So all these brushes with this little brown rectangle here are the write on ones. So they're separate from the single frame ones, which are just one frame. You can see they take place over multiple frames. So I'm going to select all of those by clicking the top one, holding Shift, then clicking the bottom one. And now this little brown rectangle indicates at what point that path is active. So I'm going to drag it in between our two keyframes, and I'll drag it so that the first keyframe here, sorry, I dragged it in between our two markers. I've dragged it so the first keyframe at our first marker is when the write on effect is at 0%. I'm going to go to the second marker, and we're just going to keyframe or set a keyframe there for 100%, and that'll automatically set for all of them. See all these other keyframes, they don't really matter because I'm going to click and drag and have this path end as soon as it reaches 100%. So if you'd like, you could select these and delete them, but it's not going to be visible anyway, so it doesn't really matter here. So if I press tilde to close the timeline full screen, you can see there it goes, drawing on. And again, the same thing applies here. If you want to change the color of them, you can simply hold Shift and select them all and change the color of one, and it will adjust them all. So that's all for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions at all. I'm happy to help. Let me know if you want any other tutorials. But besides that, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Right back, your mama ever You get on your cat, you'll be right back. You'll know where else. Get on your cat, you'll be right back.